In the 24 hours since NASCAR Heat Evolution has dropped, the NASCAR YouTube community can basically be summarised in the following piece of footage. And it's now time for me to step into the middle of all that. And in this case, I am represented nicely by Liz from Shaun of the Dead.
Can we just calm the fuck down?
This is a video I'm pretty sure a lot of you will have been waiting for with bated breath. My first impressions on NASCAR Heat Evolution, the latest officially licensed NASCAR game in the franchise. The first by Duesenberry Martin Racing, the new developers. I don't count NASCAR 15 because that was just the last bowel evacuations of ETX with DMR's name slapped on it, which doesn't even seem fair, to be honest with you. This is the first new game for them, the first on current gen. This is the first on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, as well as PC. So this was always going to be huge. This was always going to attract a lot of attention, and boy, has it done just that. I have tried to avoid all of the hype. I've tried to avoid a lot of the reviews and the, you know, the trailer analysis and the, oh, new feature announced, smash that like button, all that sort of stuff, just because I didn't want to cloud too much of my judgment on this. I really wanted to try and avoid everything else and form my own opinion on it. Easier said than done when people have been getting spectacularly butthurt about this game. First up, I've got two people to give a massive shout out to here. One of them being Andre Harrison, my podcasting brother over on the Motorsport 101 podcast. He actually helped me get this game on and around launch when it didn't look possible due to things that happened in my life. My glasses are broken, so the money I was going to spend on the game was going to have to go on replacing my glasses, which are kind of essential for me to see and read and edit and all that sort of stuff. So he helped out, he came through, he was the clutch for that one, so thank you so much. The other people who deserve a massive shout out are 365games.co.uk. If you are a British viewer, you want to play this game, link in the description below, that's where you can get it. You don't have to worry about trying, as I did unsuccessfully, trying to make a US Xbox account and order it there and blah 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 blah. They have copies of it in the UK ready for you to play. So those guys were the clutch for us, so thank you so much to those guys, brilliant. So let's get into it then. Basically, let's start the story with a bit of context here for this new game. DMR basically came together when the ETX, the ETX NASCAR license crumbled, as it deserved to be. Because I think it is fair to say the ETX NASCAR games were probably the worst series of NASCAR games in gaming history. Literally, those games were, you've heard my thoughts on them before, they were horrendous, they were buggy, they were glitchy. Everything about them was just trash. I gave up on my NASCAR 15 career mode 5 races in, and considering the only other games of note they were putting out were one of the worst Warhammer games of all time in 2014, and a video game that's now gone down as basically gaming's version of The Room. Seriously, Ride Tail Retribution, the only person who actually enjoyed it was Tommy Wiseau. He saw a bit of himself in it, and even he was going, I did not make that game, I did not make it, I did not. Oh, hi, Mark. Literally. It's trash. It's absolute trash. And it was embarrassing because you had all these major YouTubers doing videos on Ride Tail Retribution going, wow, this is a piece of shit. Who made this? Oh, they're the guys who make the NASCAR games. Oh, well, whatever. And you're just like, as a NASCAR fan, you're like, oh my god, these are the guys making our making our games? Are you serious? So luckily we got away from that. DMR came in. They started up as a brand new company in 2015. They put out NASCAR 15 basically for contractual reasons, I guess. And they formed together with Monster Games, who made the NASCAR Heat games back in the early 2000s. But since then, which is 2002, have only really made mobile games since then. And we'll come back to that theme in a bit. So, just to put into context, effectively, and I don't know if this is NASCAR just being lazy with the license, you know, this coming off the ETX debacle, it may well be, or just the fact that nowadays there's just not much of money or a budget for, you know, big budget AAA licensed sports games, you know, racing games effectively. Because I mean, you know, there's the Formula 1 games are obviously the high watermark for racing games. But you know, across the sports spectrum, you've got FIFA, I mean, naturally, Pro Evo, Madden with the NFL, 2K have been doing great things lately with the NBA games and the WWE games. So, you know, but for racing series, there's been a lot less. I mean, it's not like the PS2 era when you had licensed games for literally everything. You know, the British Touring Car Championship had a licensed game. Indycar had a licensed game. Champ Car had multiple licensed games. Truck racing in Europe had licensed games. But now, most of them either come together in multi-series games like Forza and Grid and things like that, or they just don't have a standalone game anymore. So NASCAR is kind of one of the last two left standing along with F1. So effectively, you've been given the license for that. So effectively, DMR have been given the license for this and been told to basically create a AAA, big-budget NASCAR officially licensed game in 18 months with about the budget and resources of an indie developer. Like, DMR are basically an indie developer. And it shows in this game. We'll get into that later. But there's your context. Codemasters probably weren't going to touch this game anyway, because why would they when they've got F1, Dirt, Grid, etc. and all that. EA Sports' time with the franchise has come and gone. Who else do you go to, really? And, you know, I don't know how this happened, but effectively, DMR Games were put in a tight box with this game. I feel for them on this one, because I don't think they were able to... I don't think they were given much of a chance to produce a game that would have lived up to everyone's expectations. And what's not helping here, in a way, are some of the toxic opinions and, you know, huge backlash that's happening online at the moment. Like, I'm not saying you're not allowed to you dislike the game. You're perfectly entitled to your opinions, and a lot of people who I've seen being critical have fair points. It's fine. As you know, I've got plenty of things I want to criticize about the game. But people who are sort of taking pride in beating this game down and, you know, being smug about it and cocky, like, I told you it was going to suck. Or, you know, just being like... You know, you've used the game for so many videos and views, and then you turn on it the day that the game is released, but just keep paddling it just for views. Like, I'm sorry, like, Codemasters embraced the F1 YouTube community spectacularly after F1 2015 got panned, rightfully so. And, you know, they invited major YouTubers up to the HQ to test it and everything. They invited people into a closed beta test. And look what happened. We got F1 2016, which was a brilliant step forward. It really fixed a lot of the problems of 2015. And we're not going to get that with DMR if we literally, the first time out they've done anything, we literally just take pride in absolutely defecating on everything they're doing. I just don't think it's very mature. I don't think it's a very good attitude to have, you know, especially if you're trying to make this like NASCAR YouTube community. I know there isn't one really because of just how crap the ETX games were, but I've not been happy with some of the sheer amount of backlash I've seen. I think it's gone way too far. But I think there are some sound reasons for it, and I'll get into that in a minute. Basically, in amongst all that, I then come into this game, and I've played about an hour and a half of it at time of recording. So here are my thoughts, and I'm going to start with the bad stuff, because there is plenty wrong with this game. There is. So let's apply further context here by going through some of the things I didn't like so much from the first hour and a half of gameplay. Sound design. Oh dear, this is... If you needed a giveaway that this was built on the old engine of NASCAR Heat 2002... It's the same sounds as NASCAR Heat 2002. So they're 14-year-old sounds, and they sound bad. Like, it's not even that they're old sounds that you recognize in the old games. They just sound bad. They sound low res, just not high fidelity at all. It's not good. It isn't good. And weirdly, that's one thing they could have nicked from the ETX games, because the ETX games had pretty decent sound design. The cars sounded good, and everything sounded good, so... Why they didn't just use that, I'm not entirely sure, but the sound design is not good in this game, really. It's a bit poor. I mentioned that DMR are basically an indie developer, and Monster Games have formerly made mobile games. The fact that this game was built in Unity is probably a big tip-off. This game looks, and especially in the presentation and the UI, like a mobile game. It looks a bit like an indie game on Steam meets a mobile game. Look at the size of the buttons and everything on the menu. And everything like that. It looks like you should be able to use this as a touchscreen game. It looks like it should be played on an iPad. So it kind of looks weird in that respect. It looks kind of low quality. It looks kind of low budget in that aspect, which probably doesn't help the first impressions of people that they've paid $60 for this and they see this. Speaking of looks, the graphics, we've got to talk about the graphics. Now, I'm a guy who doesn't normally get hung up on graphics too much. Like, I still play old, you know, SNES and Mega Drive and PlayStation 1 games. I don't give a fig about the graphics from there. I don't care if they look dated. I'm there to play the games because they're still fun. But the fact is, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, the expectation is that this would be like a kind of a big, you know, spectacular AAA sports game. The fact that it looks like a PS3 launch title from 2007... It's not great. One thing I will say graphically, the paint schemes are really, really good. And I actually know a few of the guys who painted the cars in this game. They are professional graphic designers and, you know, sim racing car painters and designers. And they did a great job with it. So you guys smashed it out of the park. I'll give appropriate links in the description because they're great guys. So they got that right. So if you're looking at it going, well, it looks rubbish, but I like the cars. They look good. Probably down to them, so they got their bit right, but the graphically overall, it just doesn't look like a full-on, you know, sports game in 2016. It just isn't, you know, especially when this is the first game on current gen and you're charging $60 for it. And on that point, DMR, I've tried to be charitable to you, but pulling that old bollocks of Day 1 DLC, I'm going to call you the F out on that, because that's not on at all. Day 1 DLC is one of those things that I hate about the modern gaming industry, and the fact that this game, we'll get into this in a minute, but this game probably shouldn't be retailing for $60 anyway. The fact that you then have the audacity to charge $10 to $15 for skin packs. Yet, really? Paint schemes? There's no alternate paint schemes in the base game. You have to buy packs at up to $10 each. I'm sorry, I'm not having that. You know, Turn 10 sell DLC packs for Forza, where you pay, what, $10 to $15 for cars. You get 3 to 5 actual new cars, not just repaints of existing cars. Brand new cars which add new content to the game, which adds new gameplay. You know, you've got you've got packs like the Porsche expansion pack, which adds a ton of new Porsches and a bunch more single-player stuff. You know, online modes, league modes, showcases, a load of stuff. Same with their NASCAR expansion, which was really, really good. Like, if they're charging $15 for basically an entire new game mode and roster of cars, what are DMR playing at charging $10 for some new skins? Because that's effectively what they are. And I'm not cool with it. I mean, some of the other things maybe you can justify, like new spotter voices down the road, but that's not good. And Day 1 DLC, as I say, you've taken that content out of the game to sell separately as DLC. That's a BS move. I'm never going to be cool with that. And in a game that is threatening to be a little bit malnourished and is looking a bit sort of bare bones, well, not a bit, it looks very bare bones on first impression. That's not a good look to leave people, and that probably hasn't helped people getting pretty angry about the game, which I'll explain further in a little bit. It probably isn't worth $60 right off the bat. I just don't think it has, you know, the level of polish and investment gone into it. It doesn't look like it's worth $60. Honestly, to me, it looks and kind of feels to a large extent like a $30 indie game on Steam. And it kind of reflects its origins. It's developed by largely an indie developer. And to be honest with you, it probably should have retailed for $30. But the problem is this is marketing 101. If you sell that game for $30, that gives the impression that it's a low-quality game and it's only worth that. So they kind of had to sell it for $60 because, hey, it's a big official sports game. You know, so they didn't want people looking at it going, why is it only $30? And judging it as low quality before they've even bought it. They just judged it as low quality after they bought it. Other than that, that's about the major bad points I've got. And these are personal opinions of mine. And I can tell you straight off the bat, that is not enough bad points to condemn this game as worse than the ETX NASCAR games. No way. Because the ETX NASCAR games were probably the worst NASCAR games in history. And I think people trying to say that Heat Evolution is worse are exaggerating. They're hyping up, they're making an extreme headline. You know, it's like, oh my god, it is worse than ETX NASCAR. Oh my god, NASCAR 15's better. Like, I didn't understand. Like, it was incredible how people went from hating NASCAR 15 to suddenly saying it was a really good game within 24 hours of Heat Evolution coming out. Like, whoa, okay. You changed your mind on that game pretty quick, didn't you? Because the fact is, I can tell you for a fact, I don't even have to go back and replay those games. This is far better. This is far better than the ETX NASCAR games. It didn't have to work too hard to do that, but it is. Even if you're one of those strange people who does like the ETX NASCAR games, in terms of the ranks for worst NASCAR game ever, 3 words. Days of Thunder. I don't even care if you want to say it's not officially licensed NASCAR game. It's a NASCAR game. I know it's a NES game, but it's terrible. The fact that Heat Evolution doesn't have manually controllable pit crews automatically makes it better than Days of Thunder. And I should know, I made a whole damn series on that game back in 2014. So, the good. There were enough good things that this game did. And I think I came into it knowing that this might not be the most slick and polished game in the world due to how its development, due to knowing about its development and knowing how it came together at such, you know, quite under pressure. And the fact that it does quite a few things good and actually quite well is an achievement in itself. So, let's start with one of the things I like the most, which is the handling model. And I drove a little bit on the normal handling. I think there's normal and simulation handling. Normal is pretty arcadey. You know, you could just drive around. It feels like an old NASCAR PS1 game in that respect. You know, you can drive around, you crash into people, do whatever. It's very much arcade, that handling. Simulation is a lot more simcade. I wouldn't say it is full simulation, but it is a lot more simcade. It is based a lot off the old NASCAR Heat engine, which, despite being 14 years old, I still think is really good. Hey, people are still paying NASCAR Racing 2003 season, aren't they? And those physics were built by Papyrus in 2003. So, hey, just because the base handling and physics engine is old, it doesn't mean it's not good. And it is a good engine. And I don't know if this is new for this game, but I love the little touches that they've added to the handling engine in simulation mode. Like, for example, you can really feel when a car cuts in front of you and takes the air off the nose. You can feel the steering get a little bit lighter. You can feel the car tighten up or loosen up a little bit. And little touches, like I noticed this when I was running Daytona. If you go up alongside a car in side draft, you feel the wheels sort of get turned a little bit by the wash and the bow wave of the air coming off the trailing air coming off the other car. I like that. That's a little touch. I'm like, that's good attention to detail. There's a decent level of content and features in this game. I'd argue it's up there with the F1 games in terms of content. But there is a challenge mode, there's a career mode, there's a championship mode. Career mode looks pretty extensive. I'm looking forward to getting into it. There's, you know, kind of creator driver features, and, you know, it's kind of harking back to the older EA Sports NASCAR games. And to be fair, the ETX NASCAR games didn't have a bad career mode at all. It wasn't too bad in terms of features. So there's enough content in here, and it's decent stuff. And the roster is good. There are 3 or 4 fancy Xfinity stroke truck drivers in the game, like the ETX games, but there's only, I think, 4 of them this time around. There's the 96 there's the 96 of Ben Kennedy in a fictional Red Horse racing car. There's the Brad Keselowski Racing truck team represented as cup drivers in 19 and 29, Tyler Reddick and I want to say Austin Theroux. Don't quote me on that. And there's also a fictional NASCAR Heat Evolution car piloted by Matt Tifft, who was one of the ambassadors for the game. And otherwise, I don't mind that. I prefer that to what they used to do in the EA Sports games, which was just make fictional generic cars, which kind of threw you out the experience a lot more. And speaking of keeping you in the experience and immersion, let's get to the thing that I think this game did best of all, and what really has kind of saved the game for me is the AI. The actual core gameplay experience of racing a NASCAR race is really quite good, and in most part it's down to the AI. Now, the AI settings, the difficulty settings in itself are pretty good. Cody's could definitely learn from the fact they have a sliding scale difficulty level all the way from like 70 up through to 105. So you have that sort of, they're extremely hard and overdriving and aggressive, and they will cause wrecks on their own sort of mode. But there's also a nice feature where you can set the difficulty level to auto, so it kind of adjusts based on your previous results. But you can also make it go 2% either way. And I found all the gameplay you're watching in this video was on auto plus 2%. And the fact is, each race did get noticeably harder, noticeably more competitive, because they kind of automatically adjust and then add a little bit more, just so it's a little bit more of a challenge. And I really like that as a way of doing difficulty levels. And what it creates in-game is a really, really good AI model, which has none of that flawed just brokenness of the NASCAR 15 AI, where they just, I mean, they'd go for gaps that didn't exist, they'd crash you into the wall, they'd plow you out of nowhere, if you even got near their car, they'd randomly start wobbling in a straight line and swerve into you, and it was just, the AI in the ETX games broke those games for me. Above everything else that was broken in those games, it was the AI that really, really made me stop playing those games. Conversely, the AI in Heat Evolution might be what really keeps me playing this game and what gives it longevity, because the AI are genuinely pretty good. They react in fairly realistic ways. Yeah, they'll sometimes get into you a little bit or touch you or, you know, chop you off a little bit. That's not dissimilar to what you see in real life, to be honest with you, though. And they do react quite well. They don't, you know, they don't drive like they've got the blinkers on. They don't randomly slow down in the middle of the corners, which is an issue with the Forza 6 Oval AI, which is a bit frustrating. Generally, they are pretty aggressive. You know, if you make a mistake, they will go to the inside or go to the outside and make the pass on you. They won't hold back. They won't faint. They won't be too timid like the F1 2016 AI is a little bit timid. You just stick your nose down the inside, even if you just hint at going, oh, I might be overtaking here. They're like, and they just swerve off track. You don't really get that so much in Heat Evolution. The AI generally are very, very good, and the way they race is very believable. The pack racing I got at Daytona was fairly plausible. The way they race at tracks like Fontana, Texas, it's all pretty believable. You know, it feels like you're in a fairly accurate representation of a real NASCAR race, and that's probably why, if any of the drivers who have played this have said this is a pretty realistic experience, that's probably where it comes from. It feels really good, and to be honest with you, right from the first race, I found myself having fun. I found myself smiling. I found myself going, whoa, down to the inside, down on the low side, we're 3 wide, you know, having all of that. I found myself getting into the game because of the AI, because of the core gameplay. Once you get onto the track, that core gameplay between the good handling and the actually really good AI. I'd say this is some of the best AI in not just NASCAR gaming, but in racing gaming for quite a while. Certainly NASCAR and oval racing AI are very difficult to do. The EA NASCAR AI wasn't too bad, but it's, as I say, it's the most kind of real feeling AI in a NASCAR game in a very long time, and it feels good. It feels like you can enjoy racing across long distances. I've had friends of mine say they've raced 50% races, and you know, the AI tries different lines across the course of a tire run, and you know, tire fall off just plays in just enough to make it a factor. And you know, there's strategic elements and ways, you know, guys, you can go side by side with AI drivers for lap after lap after lap. That's great. That's a great compliment, because in the ETX games you could never do that. So in conclusion, basically, I don't blame you if you are slightly disappointed by this game. I do blame you if you're putting this game full on blast, either just for hits or just to be smug and just to be superior. Because as I say, that doesn't help anyone. If we want to build a good relationship in the community with DMR games going forward, you know, potentially have them kind of invite our feedback in, whatever, you know, in the way that Cody's do it. They might not be interested, in which case that's fair. But if we want to do that sort of thing, this sort of just smug, I told you so vitriol doesn't help anyone, really, and I'd advise you just don't do that. You can be critical, you can be negative without just, like, taking pleasure in it and going completely over the top with it. But if you are disappointed by this game, I don't blame you, because as a AAA major-level sports game, it's not there. It's not on the level. As I say, it's not worth $60. It's a decent indie game masquerading as a top-tier AAA sports game. And as I said before, I just don't think DMR were really given that much of a chance. To try and build a new game like that on a new console with barely any of the assets from the old game on a brand new game engine, you know, in the space of 18 months with nowhere near the resources and money of a studio like an EA or a Codemasters or, you know, a Turn 10 or a Polyphony, they really had their backs against the wall with this one. And I think their attitude has been, look, we know this game is going to be limited in certain areas, but at a basic level, let's make sure we nail the basics. Let's make sure we get the bare bones of this game right. So if you went into this hoping for big flash and great, you know, next-gen graphic, 4K, 60 FPS graphics, you're going to be disappointed, and I can't blame you for that. As a solid foundation, as a good bare bones, not even bare bones, as a good solid foundation and a core NASCAR experience, it is good. It's pretty good. You know, on the double toasted review scale, I'd put this at kind of a solid high rental, low matinee. It's certainly not a some old BS, and it's certainly not an FU. It just is, it's a fun core game, and given the limitations it had with its development and, you know, lack of big tier investment, that's about the best we could probably ask for at this point. I think DMR have, to a degree, pulled it out, and there's some nice touches here, there's some nice elements, there's some nice detail, and there's enough here to convince me that if they go back and, you know, take on board some of the feedback and have more time and more resources to really work on the graphics and the sound and work on the presentation and the feel and the look of the game, that's where it really needs to work. And if they're able to work on that for NASCAR Heat 2K17 or whatever it turns out to be called, we could be in for a decent few years as NASCAR gamers. So, basic summary, it is nowhere near as bad as other people will tell you. It isn't amazing, no, but there's enough here to have fun with. If you're watching this and you're on the fence about buying it, I probably wouldn't buy it right now. I bought it, you know, for my channel and for reviews purposes, and, you know, because Dre supported me in that, and it was, I'm amazingly grateful for that. But if I were you, and if you're on the fence about this game, I'd give it a little while. Maybe save your money for Forza Horizon 3 for now, and then wait until this comes down in price to around $30. It's around $30 worth of good NASCAR game. As I say, it's basically a good indie NASCAR game. So those are my first impressions. I will have a full, more structured review up, as I say, over on GameSkinny.com. I'll have a text review, a written review up over there. I'll hopefully have a review up as well on the Dre View series on the Motorsport 101 YouTube channel. We're doing a new series where we review video games over there. I should have a full review for those guys over there as well, because, of course, me being the NASCAR guy on the show, they've been very curious about my thoughts, and you've heard some of them here, but I'm going to obviously, you know, take more time to play this game and give my full kind of constructed thoughts at a later time. This is an initial ramble after the first 90 minutes of gameplay, and I'm looking forward to, once I hit the stop button and I edit this video together and I export it, I'm looking forward to going back and starting recording my career mode. And that to me tells me that NASCAR Heat Evolution is pretty decent. It's alright by me. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on this game. Don't get me wrong, if you don't like this game, you are totally allowed to. I just like reason and I like logic for it. Give you reasons on it. There are some people who don't like this game and they've given very good reason for it. Absolutely fine. You know, you're allowed your opinions. And if you enjoyed this video, destroy the like button. Comment below your thoughts on NASCAR Heat Evolution, and I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, for round 1 of BombersportsPlays NASCAR Heat Evolution Career Mode. Let's bring the noise, folks.